Hey guys, in this tutorial I'm going to demonstrate the Polygon Photoshop action. So this action will take your photo and create a 3D polygon effect. Now the way that you color and light your design is through the colors of any photo you choose or any image that you create. So here's a few examples where I was just experimenting with colors from different photos to recolor and light my design. Now I've also isolated the wireframe layer for you to work with, so you can recolor that if you like, or export that out as a graphic on its own, or combine it, overlay it with your original photo. So I'll show you a few more examples of how I've used color from photos to apply to my design. Okay, I'll show you some more examples now, but feel free to skip ahead to the start of the tutorial if you want. Alright, let's jump into Photoshop. So in the first part of the tutorial, I'll use this photo as an example, and in the second part, I'll use this transparent image of this text. So firstly, what we want to do is check the size of our photo. So if you go to image size, just make sure you're working with a high resolution photo so you can see the dimensions of mine here. I would avoid using any image under 1,000 pixels. You're always going to get better results using higher resolution photos. So the first thing we need to do is load up the actions panel. So if you go to window, actions, should pop up somewhere to the side here, depending on where you got your panels located. Now with the action panel open, you want to click on this icon and go to load actions. Select Polygon by Sevenstyles.atn, and it will appear here inside a folder. So you can expand open the folder and you can see all the actions we have here. So these ones down the bottom, you don't need to touch those, and I've got in brackets there, don't touch, just a reminder. So these are the ones that we're initially interested in, and these two here you can apply after you've run any of these actions. So you can see that I've numbered these 1 through to 7, and basically number 1 will apply a very low polygon count to your photo, and 7 being the highest. So because everyone's photos are going to vary in detail, I'd recommend starting here at number 4 and sort of assessing it from there, seeing how many polygons it's created. If it's created too much, maybe you want to play number 3 and work your way down. And yeah, if it hasn't applied enough, you can work your way up higher. So all you need to do with your photo open and the action loaded here is click play. Now, once you click play, you're going to get a message, and this will guide you through what to do next. It's very simple. It just says step 1, brush on high polygon count areas. So if I click stop, you'll see that the action stopped playing back and the brush tool is selected. Now, you might want to, I've just selected a soft brush here, so whatever brush you want to use, it doesn't really matter. What you want to do is start brushing the areas where you want to apply a higher level of polygon detail. So any area that's blurred is going to create larger polygons, and any area that I start brushing, so for example the hair here, will create lots of little polygons. So I recommend only brushing areas where you really need more detail. So for example here I might just want to brush the eyes, okay, because that's really my focal point here. And you see I don't really need to add too much detail into nose and mouth because I want to keep those slightly larger polygons. Now, when you finish brushing, you can just click play, and the action will resume. Now, there'll be one more step, which will pop up in a second. Okay, so this one is step 2, scale image to fit canvas. So all you need to do here is click continue, right? And there might be a pause for 2 or 3 seconds before the transform controls appear. So we'll just wait for that. Okay, now you can see again that the action has stopped and there is a transform bounding box around this layer here. So what you want to do is, firstly, if you can't see the corners of the transform controls, you need to zoom out. So holding down Control or Command minus, you can zoom out here, just like that. So now I can see all the controls. And the aim of this step is, all you need to do is scale up this layer to match the size of your canvas. So if you just grab one of these top corners, hold down Alt or Option, click and drag, it will scale the layer uniformly, and you want to scale it up to match the size of your canvas. Now, it doesn't need to be 100% accurate. It can go a little bit over or under. It's up to you. So we'll just keep it pretty close there. And when you're done, all you need to do is hit enter, and the action will then go through to the finish. So I'll fast forward the video and I'll jump to the result. Alright, the action's just finished playing back, and here's the result. So let's collapse the actions panel here, and I'll zoom in here so you can see the details. Okay, zoom back out, and let's jump into the layer panel. So firstly, let's collapse all these folders that are open. So to do that is hold down Control Alt or Command Option and click on this arrow here next to the folder icon. Click on that, release the keys, and then reopen the folder, and everything is collapsed, so it's much neater to work with. Alright, so the most important layer here is the light and color setup. This allows us to use the colors from any photo to recolor and light our design. So this layer is in fact a 3D object. So if you double click on this layer, we go into the 3D workspace. So to zoom up on your image, hit Control or Command plus, zoom up here so we can see the details more. And the first thing we want to do is load up the 3D panel. So if you go to Window, 3D, it will pop up to the side here. And we also need to load up the Properties panel. So go back to Window, Properties, and the Properties panel will also appear. Now, if they're in 2 separate locations, what I like to do is drag the Properties panel over the top of the 3D panel. Now when I click on the 3D panel, we have the 3D and the Properties panels in tabs, so it's much easier just to flick back and forth between. So what can we do in the 3D workspace? Well, the first thing we can do is click on the infinite light icon here, and now when I click around, click, hold and drag, you can see that the lighting is updating over our image, which is pretty cool. And if we then click on the properties for the light, so click the light, click properties, we can adjust the brightness of the light here, and we can also adjust the color, which is pretty cool, just like that. Okay, I'm just going to undo that for the moment. Now if we go back into the 3D panel, if you click on environment, then into the properties, this is where we can use any photo to recolor and light our design. Now the area that we're really interested in here is this top area, in particular this IBL section, which is image-based lighting. Now currently this little grey image here is the image that is casting a grey tone, even though I know the image is black and white. If this was a coloured image, this would be casting sort of greyer values, and you can see that these little white dots are applying these lighter colour reflections here. So if you click on this icon here and go to edit texture, you can see this is the Photoshop default IBL image-based lighting texture that's used. So you can see there's little white dots and shapes here, what causing the lighter color reflections. So again, you can increase the brightness here or the influence of this texture over your design. We can also click on the global ambient color here if you want to apply just an overall tint to the image. So to replace this photo, all you need to do is click on this icon and go to replace texture. When you've done that, what you want to do is navigate to the Polygon color maps folder. It's included in the download. And I've just added a bunch of different photos here which you can experiment with, which will create different lighting and color effects. Now, like I said, you can use any photo that you like. So, just download a bunch of photos or create some designs and just experiment. So let's go for number 31 here. So I'll double click on that. And now you can see that the colors from that photo have now been applied to our design. Now, if you click on the orbit tool here, click, hold and drag, we can spin this photo. So you can see it in the middle here in this orb. You can spin that around and that will update all the reflection color, which is pretty cool. So let's leave it there. So again, we can play around with the brightness of this texture here, the intensity, and we can jump back into the global ambient color here, and let's turn this down a lot so we're pretty much just using 100% of the colors here from the photo to apply to our design. And I'll jump back to the infinite light here, and I'll click on the properties, and let's play with this a little bit, and I might check out changing this color here. Let's go really dark. I'll jump back to the environment tab and to this intensity slide. I'll turn it up a bit. Okay, so it's as simple as that. So the process again, all you want to do is click on this icon, replace texture, and choose any photo, and it will update. And the key part is to click on the orbit tool and spin the texture around to get it into a position where you like the colors and the overall lighting. Now, when you're happy with your result, this is a very important step. What we want to do is right click over the layer and click render 3D layer. So that'll take a couple of seconds. So when that's done, what you need to do is close the 3D workspace. So click X there, or Control or Command W. And then what you want to do is you want to save the changes. So click yes. And then it is now updated in our main Photoshop document. So let's say you want to create an additional look, but you want to keep this one just in case this is your preferred result. What you want to do is right click on the light and color setup layer and click new smart object via copy. It's very important you do it that way and not just duplicate the layer. If you just duplicate the layer and then we go inside and change the 3D properties again, then save it, it will also apply those changes to our main layer. So right click new smart object via copy. So what we can do now is I can double click to go back inside the workspace, Control plus to zoom up here, and I can click on my 3D panel, click on environment, properties, and now I can try another texture. So let's go for this dark one here. Okay, so let's spin this around. So something like that. Let's just boost up the brightness. Okay, I'm happy with that, so I'm going to right click on the layer, render 3D layer. Close this document. Yes, want to save the changes. So now we have two different variations. We have this one and this one. So you can experiment and create as many layers as you want, but just be aware that these are 3D layers and to keep track of the file size. So currently this file is 200 meg. If I hide this layer here, actually, so I'll delete it just a moment. It goes from 200 to 164. So the more layers you create, the bigger your file will get. So for the moment, let's just work with our original blue design here. So let's check out this layer here, 3D contrast. So by default, I've got this turned off. So if you turn this on, this will add a bit of contrast to your design. And I've got in brackets here opacity. So it's just reminding you to play around with this layer through its opacity. So if I click, hold and drag on the word opacity here, drag to the right to increase it, left to decrease it, you can see how that is influencing our design. So by default, that's at 30%. So just play around with that to see if it looks better with a higher or lower opacity. Next, this layer here called shadow detail. Again, I've got in brackets opacity. So if I turn this layer off, you can see that what it does, it applies the original shadow detail of our photo, and it allows us to bring out the shadow detail back into our design. So without it, you can see that we lose a lot of definition. So I'll turn it on, it will increase the definition. So by default, this is at 60%. So I drag it to 100%. You can see how that's working there. So typically you just want to play around with this opacity, get it to a level that you like. Let's just say that I like the background, this tone of blue, but I really want to darken the eyes a bit more. So what I'll do here, I will duplicate this layer. So Control or Command J to duplicate it. And I'll adjust this opacity. So just looking at the eyes here, I'll play around the opacity and get it to a level that I like. Okay, so that's good. And then what I'll do, I'll select the mask. Okay, and I'll invert that mask. So Control or Command I, that will flip it to black. So now this layer is hidden. So if I select the mask, hit B, grab my brush tool, make white my active color, I can start brushing white onto the mask here to reveal the layer. So doing that there, I can just reveal the eyes. Now I can adjust the opacity again, and you can see what that's doing. So I can get that to a level that I'm happy with, so something like that. Next is the lines and dots folder. So by default, it is turned on. So if I zoom in here, we can see all the line and dot detail. So if I just hide this folder, we are just left with the just the polygons. So if you prefer that look, just turn the folder off altogether. So let's zoom in here and turn it back on. Let's go inside, and we have two folders, the dots and the lines. So if you just want the lines, turn the dots off. Okay. Now let's just go inside the lines folder here. So what can we do here? We can change the lines color. So you can just double click on this box here and just choose any color you like. So you can see it updates there. Click cancel. One thing to be wary of here with the lines layer is that I've set the opacity quite low at 20%. This just allows the dots to stand out a bit more, but you can increase this, all the way up to 100%. So I'll zoom out here. You can see the lines are much more prominent there. And of course, I've applied masks to everything. So if you just want the lines to appear in a certain part of your photo, you might want to use that method again of selecting the lines folder, Control or Command I to invert it, and then just brush on, where you want the lines to appear. Okay, so undo that. So sometimes, you might get, keep on doing, sometimes you might not want a lot of line detail around the eyes or wherever you like. So you might just want to select, get black as my active color, brush black into the mask here to hide it, and I'll just hide that. I'll just turn the opacity here back down to 20. I can just select that layer and hit 2 on the keyboard. That'll lower that opacity to 20. And I don't want all these dots around the eyes as well, so I'll select the dots folder, hit B, and brush black onto the mask to hide those dots. Alright. Now, if you only want to use the lines and dots, what you could do is just select the layer below, create a new layer, Control Shift N or Command Shift N. I'll zoom out here, Control 0. I'll zoom in a bit more, Control minus. Now what I can do here, I can just hit U, grab my shape tool here, grab a rectangle tool and just draw a box over the canvas. Okay, our lines and dots are black, so I just want to click on this layer, flip that to white, and let's disable these masks. So hold down Shift and click on those masks, disable those. So now all we're left with are the lines and the dots. So let's just say you just want to work with the lines, increase this opacity to 100%, and then you can save that out. And of course this is all transparent, so you can hide all these layers below here. So you can just export that and have a transparent background. So let's turn these back on. Alright, let's delete this layer for the moment. Let's turn the lines opacity back down to 20%. Collapse those, let's keep moving up. So these three layers here, highlights brightness, midtones brightness, and shadows brightness. This allows us to control the brightness of certain tonal values in our design. So for example, if I double click, so if I click on this layer here, and drag these handles around, you can see that I'm only affecting the shadows or the darker tones in our image. Whereas if I grab the highlights here and grab this one, you can see that if I zoom in here, because there are only certain bright values in this design, you can see how it is just affecting those areas. Or if I grab the midtones, I'll zoom out and do the same, it's going to brighten up that tonal range. Okay. Now, little tip: if you want to, so for example, if you wanted this to affect more of the brighter areas of your design, what you can do is double click on this layer, and you can see here the blend if slider. So I've limited this layer to only affect this tonal range in our design. So these values here. So if I drag this to the left, I'm basically saying that this levels adjustment layer here can now affect this tonal range. Now what you want to do is hold down Alt to split these apart a bit. Just creates a bit of a softer look. So I'll click OK. So now when I do this, it should affect a, so you can see that's affecting a slightly larger area. So what I'll do, I'll exaggerate this. I'll drag this out. So you can see the further I drag it to the left, the more it is going to affect our design. So you can see if I hold down Alt here, it creates a much softer transition. So let's cancel that. I'll just reset all that, undo. Okay, so the key thing to remember here is that this shadow detail layer will apply the original shadow values of our photo back into our design. So you can see that here. Whereas this one will look at our current design. It'll look at the darker values, and so we can control the brightness of those areas. All right. So this layer here, if you want to adjust the overall brightness and contrast, you can just double click on this one and play around with that there. If you want to increase the overall saturation, you can adjust that. By default, I've just upped it a little bit, but you can of course play around with that. So this folder here, color fill layers, let's go inside here. If you want to apply an overall color, an overall tint, you can just click on that. You can play around with the blend modes as well. Currently got set to color at 100% opacity. You can of course just lower that opacity down or adjust the blend mode. So you can go something like soft light or overlay. I'll undo that. So these 4 layers here allow us to color certain tonal ranges in our design. So this one here will apply a color to our highlights, whereas red the shadows. So if I turn that on, you can see it's applied a red value to our dark areas in our design. Purple, yellow, and again, this works in a similar way to these layers where I use the blend if slider here to adjust what tonal ranges these colors will be applied to. So if I want to increase the range of the purple, of the yellow here, I can double click, and let's just reset these. Okay, so let's drag this to the right. Let's just say I want to apply the yellow tint here, and let's remove it from a bunch of the highlights here. So hold down Alt to soften that transition. Okay, and then of course you can just double click and change the colors, and I've got them all set to color as well. So again, you can play around with the blend modes. Okay, so let's hide this folder for the moment, and let's open up the actions panel again, and let's play these other 2 actions here. So we have this one here called Add Highlights Glow. So if you select that and click play, what that will do, that will look for the brightest values in your design and apply glow to it. So at the top here, it has created this folder called Highlights Glow, and again I've got in brackets opacity. So the folder opacity is at 50%. So let's drag it to 100, then 0, so you can see what that's doing there. So let's add a bit of glow there, and you can go inside here, and I've got 2 glow blur layers. So you can click on this arrow here and double click on Gaussian blur, and you can adjust the spread of the glow. So you might be able to see that there. So you can play around with that. Again, if you plan on running this action again, you need to delete this highlights glow folder. And let's say I wanted to create, you know, some more brighter values in our design. So what I can do, let's just go to the midtones. Let's increase this. Let's add a bunch more contrast. And then what I'll do, I'll run the action again and see if that's now applied glows to a large area, which it did a bit. So you can just experiment with that. Let's just reset this for the moment. Actually, I might bring that up. It's a fraction. Alright, and the other action here is add color options. So if you click on that, click play, what this will do, this will create 30 color options at the top here for you to experiment with. So I'll let this play out. Alright, so it's this folder in green. If you expand this folder, there's 30 color options in here. Now what you want to do again is hold down Control Alt or Command Option and click on this arrow, reopen the folder, and they're all collapsed. So the way these work is that you just turn on the visibility for that layer, and that will apply a different color option. Okay. Now all these folders' opacity is set to 100%. So let's say you like the look of this one, but you don't want it to use it at full opacity. So I'll drag this back to 0, and I'll start dragging to the right, and you know, you can get to a level that you like. And then of course you can combine it with other, so let's turn this down to say 30%, and then I can turn on other color options and combine the two. Okay, so I can turn this one down, and you can just keep stacking different color options and build a look that you like. Alright, so let's collapse this. Now, a few other tips if you want to apply some additional color options. If you go down to this icon here and select color lookup, you'll get this window pop up here, and from the 3D LUT file drop down menu, there's a bunch of color options here. So I can click on 2 strip, and using the down arrow I can just scroll through, you know, a bunch of different color options. And again, you don't need to use this at 100% opacity. You can just apply a little bit of that color if you like, so something like that. And what I can do then, I can duplicate this layer, Control Command J, and I can now continue scrolling down, applying a second. That's pretty cool. Something like that. Alright, now another way to add additional color options is to merge your design onto one layer. So Control Shift Alt E or Command Shift Option E, just make sure the top layer is selected. And what that will do, that'll merge everything that you see onto one layer. Alright, and now what we can do, we can go into, actually before that, right click and go convert to a smart object. So this will allow us to edit these adjustments again if we need to. So if you go to Filter, Camera Raw Filter, there's a bunch of different settings here. You can, you know, we can adjust the shadow brightness here, the whites, we can adjust that. But this icon here, click on this one, Browse Profiles, and there's a bunch of different color options here. So I can twirl open Artistic and just scroll down through here, and that will apply some additional color options. That one looks pretty good. So I'm going to select that, click OK, and now that's updated in our design. So if you want to adjust this setting again, I can just double click on this Camera Raw Filter option, and then I can play around with the settings again. Let's cancel that. Now another tip is that if you want to individually color these polygons, all you need to do is zoom in. So click Z, and I'll click and drag to zoom in. So let's just say that I want to change the color of this polygon here. All I need to do is select any layer here, click, hit P on the keyboard to activate the pen tool. Let's turn this to a shape layer, okay? And I can just click and around this polygon here. And what that will do, that will fill that in with a solid color. Actually, what you might want to do, let's just turn off this for the moment, is that you want to probably put this below, if you plan on keeping the lines, you might want to put this below the lines and dots folder. Okay. Now what I can do, I can double click on this shape and I can select a new color. So you can see out there. And of course you can do creative things like you can offset this or put this out this way, sort of make it look like the polygons are falling off your subject, which could create a pretty cool effect. Another nice way you can experiment with adjusting colors is on the overall color saturation layer. You can double click on that and you can click on this icon here and then select a color that you want to change. So let's click on this, this pink value here. Then I can adjust the hue and you see that's going to adjust those colors. So that's pretty cool. You can also play around with this here to affect a larger color range. So I can adjust that. So that is looking pretty cool. Let's run the glow again. I think I deleted it. Yes, I did. So let's run this again. Alright, let's lower the opacity down a bit. Alright, I might turn the lines and dots off. I think I prefer it without it in this design. But what I might do, I might experiment with adding some lines just in the background. So I'm going to turn on the lines and dots folder here and just go inside the lines folder, and I want to change the color, something a bit lighter so I can see them in the background. And I want to re-enable this mask, so I just clicked on it to remove that X, and I want to fill the mask in black. So I'm just going to click on my foreground color here or hit X on the keyboard. That will reset the swatches and make black your foreground color. So to fill in the mask with your foreground color, you hold down Alt backspace or Option backspace. So now the mask is completely hidden. So now what I can do, I can just hit B, hit X again, that will flip it. So white is now my active color, and I can just brush on now where I want those lines to appear in the background. Something like that, that'll do. Alright, I think we're done with this design, so let's move on to the next example. This time we're going to use an image with a transparent background. This will allow us to have any background we want behind the main visual after the action is complete. So we're going to try and work towards something similar to this, more of a gold effect. So the first thing I want to do here is add a bit more detail into this text here. So it's quite flat at the moment. So adding just a little bit of shading will help create a bit more detail with the polygons and give it more of a 3D look. So to do that, I'm just going to double click on this layer and select bevel and emboss, and I'm just going to add a little bit of shading so you can see that there, and click OK. Next, I want to open up the actions panel, and this time I'm going to go for a slightly lower polygon count. I'm going to click play here, and it's asking where we want to brush on areas with a higher polygon count. So I'm going to click stop, but this time I want to brush everywhere basically. I want everything to have a higher polygon count. So I'm going to start brushing just like that. So, but if I undo that, you can see that if I don't brush, it's hidden a lot of those details in the text. So it's filled those gaps in, so I didn't want that. So let's just brush over that again. If you make a mistake and you want to undo your brushing, just hit X and that will flip this to white. So now I can start brushing again and that will undo it. So X, flip it to black, and now I can start brushing again. So that's good. Next, I'm going to click play, and we will get to the second stage where we need to scale up our layer. So here it is here. Step 2, scale image to fit canvas. I'm going to click continue, and Control minus to zoom out a bit, and holding down Alt or Option, click, hold and drag, and scale up the layer to match your background layer there. And zoom back in. When you're done, hit enter on the keyboard, then the action will resume to the finish. So I'll fast forward the video and get to the result. Okay, let's collapse the actions panel, jump into the layer panel here. So firstly, let's collapse these folders. Hold down Control Alt or Command Option, click on this arrow, release the keys, reopen the folder, everything's collapsed. So now we can hide this background layer here, get rid of that. And if I just hit U, grab my shape tool here, rectangular tool, click on that, I can now drag, create a background here. Okay, and I can make this any color, but we're going to try come close to this, so let's just keep it dark. So the first thing we need to do is edit our 3D layer. So let's double click to go inside. Control plus, let's zoom in a bit. And let's open up our 3D panel here. So just a reminder, if you don't have this panel here, you need to go to Window 3D, and you also need to have the Properties panel here. So if you go Window Properties, that will appear in the sidebar here as well. So the first thing I want to do here is shut off the infinite light. So I'm going to select that, click on the property for the light, and I'm going to turn down the intensity to 0. Next, jump back to 3D. I'm going to go to the environment section, click on properties, and I want to turn the global ambient light all the way off. Click OK. And let's replace the default texture with a new one. So replace texture, navigate to the Polygon color maps folder, and the one I want is this one here. So I'm going to double click on that. I'm going to zoom out a bit. So now I can, with the orbit tool selected, I can now rotate this texture. Don't worry about what's appearing in the background there, that won't show up in the final result. So let's boost the intensity here a bit. Let's boost it right up. So let's just go something like this. Okay, what I can do now, I can right click on the layer here, render the 3D layer. Control S to save this document. Now we can close this down. So here it is in our main design. I actually think this is too dark, so I might jump back into the 3D workspace here, double click on that layer, zoom up a bit, open my 3D panel here, click on environment, and I might just rotate this texture some more, make it a bit brighter. Maybe something like that. Okay, I'm going to render the 3D layer. Control or Command W to close it. Yes, we want to save it. That's a bit better. So let's start experimenting with some of these layers. So firstly, I might turn off the shadow detail and see what that's doing. So I might keep that off because it's just adding, it's just darkening up our image too much there. Next, I'm going to turn on the 3D, let's hide this, turn on the 3D contrast, and let's adjust the opacity here and see what that's doing. Probably keep that turned off. Okay, I might shut off the lines and dots for the moment. Now I want to add a bit of contrast here to the overall contrast. So I'm going to jump to this layer, double click, and I might drag this to the right, and then bring this up a bit more. Something like that. Okay, next I want to add some glows to this. So I'm going to open up the Actions panel, select the Add Highlights Glow, click play, and see the glows there. Let's turn up to 100%. Another way to add more glow is to select the Glow Blur 2 layer and duplicate it. So hit Control or Command J, duplicate that, and that will increase the glow. I can double click on this then and just increase the glow spread of this one. Click OK. Let's have another look at the opacity. And that's good. Alright, let's add a couple more changes and we're done. So I'm going to go down to the background here, select the rectangle layer, double click on that. Let's change the color here. Let's go maybe like a lighter brown, click OK. Next, I want to add a drop shadow to all this text here. So I'm going to select the main Polygon folder. I'm going to double click on that and add a drop shadow. And I think that looks good. So I'm going to click OK. And we're done. Okay, so that's how you use the Polygon action. Now, I'll put a link down below to a website where you can download lots of free photos so you can trial different coloring and lighting styles. And just remember that the key to this effect really is to go inside the light and color setup layer here and to play around with these settings, particularly in the environment, and adjusting or replacing the default Photoshop image-based lighting image with a photo that you want to try out, and then adjusting the brightness, playing around with the global ambient color. Okay, if you want to use 100% of the colors and lighting from your photo, make sure that's set to black, and also that the infinite light is also set, the intensity is set to 0. Okay, close that. I hope you enjoy using the effect, and thanks for your support.